this year, as we are trying to address what I would say is a gap in our ability to support communities, we have a lot of incentives, cash incentives, technical resources, connections with contractors that we are able to offer small businesses. We have something new called a energy assessment, which is a walkthrough assessment one of our field staff can do that provides you with a report on the types of investments that you can make in your building. It also will let you know what energy trust incentives would be available to you after those upgrades are made. We also have things like retro commissioning, so if you have an HVAC system that's fairly new, but you're still finding your utility bill is high, we can come in and help you sort out the reasons for that. We also have coming up, I don't know if anybody here participated in the tube LED replacement program we had in the county about 2.5 years ago. Those were at no cost to businesses, so essentially we contract with contractors across the state. You call us, we match a contractor, they schedule time to come into your facility, and you get free LED light bulbs and the savings that come with it. And if there's any I should say, upgrades that need to be made to your fixtures, that's something that we sort of sort out on the back end. That's not typical though. So that's coming. So I will work with folks to make sure that the chamber and can help advertise for that. I also wanted to say, if you are endeavoring to take on a space where there's a comprehensive renovation that would trigger code, that sorts to our new buildings program. There's a whole different track of resources that would be available to you through that. So I always like to say, if you take anything away, take my card. It's always better to talk about specific things with your specific project and get you matched up, rather than having you go to our website and try to page through resources and figure out where you fit in our program. And then Sheri reminded me of a really great resource. So right before COVID, I was so worried Energy Trust's name was going to be on the top half of the newspaper, but March 6th, LeGrand, Main Street, we had an event to talk about Main Street vitalization in historic buildings, and we presented at that, and we sponsored it. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a COVID outbreak, you know, I was so worried about it. But there was also a group from Class Up Community College that reminded the folks of a resource for an energy efficiency guide for historic buildings. That's something, if folks here don't have access to, let me know and email me, grab my card, or I'm sure Sheri can send that to you as well. And they're talking about refreshing it soon, so that's pretty exciting. So anyway, thank you for the time. It's really been great talking with you all. It's very inspiring.
Caryn, I have a question. You and I talked earlier today about replacing a heating system with the May split heat pump, and you indicated that I had to be replacing existing heating. If I have a property that has hybrid heating system, i.e. a freestanding older propane fuel heater, but each individual room prior to me installing that has in the wall cadet heaters. Where do I stand with regard to getting?
You would have to dig into the utility bill history.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. There's exceptions that can be made. As an example, if you're running a commercial operation out of a residential shop, so it's on a residential rate schedule, we can still get you access to commercial incentives, but there's a lot of different conditions we would have to take on a case-by-case basis. Also, if a primary heat source, like what you're describing, if that electric heat has not been used for a really long time, I'm doubtful that we could make an exception, but it's always worth asking and then finding out.
Okay.
And that's really important too. So just, again, we are funded by Pacific Power customers in this county to support. So if your heating source is something like propane, oil, pellets, and you want to switch out heating source, we wouldn't be able to incentivize that.
fill some space with some questions, and I'm gonna try to, instead of like one question at a time, I'm gonna try to wrap up your 4 approach, maybe. If that doesn't work, tell me and I can separate them. So, a couple years ago, right before the pandemic, when we were having a conversation about starting Main Street, it seemed like Wallowa was getting some good, like, steamrolling momentum, and then it stopped. I'm thinking about a timeline to get that going again, whether it's as a town or as a region. What are the next steps to identify? Do you have 3 communities, or 6, or whatever, in this area to make it a regional one? Is there a timeline for when we know, hey, yeah, there's definitely 3, or no, Wallowa, you should take your momentum and go? That had been a $2 million camp, like a cap on grants when we got to that point after the education and trainings and other things. Is that the same dollar figure for a region, or is the region more? Do you want to stop? Or
Every
keep
town,
going?
every town,
Each
each town.
individual community, okay, thanks.
Yep.
And then you had talked about a focus area. Is that a focus area for each community or a focus area for the region?
Each community would define their own
Which
primary focus area.
perfect. And then the survey that we did last time to kind of say what are our local goals, what would be the things that we would really miss and identify as our thing. Is that a survey that would again be sent out to each community or to the region?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question, and I guess it depends on at what level engagement some of those other communities want to participate. So if some of the communities want to do the full Main Street, like Wallowa, when you first approached me about joining the network, then we might do area by area survey. But it's one of those things that's the fluid part of it. Some of those specific details.
Yeah.
It's I may have one thought about how that could happen, but then the community say no, we really want to do it this way. Then it's like fine. It's like nothing. It's not like this is the way and the only way. This is. Let's figure this out as we go along, what works for each of the communities. And my thought is, if Wallowa is ready right now, right today, to move forward, then we just take you out of mothballs and let's get you going. And then if the regional happens, then we can join you up with the regional. We don't want to hold you off for a year if you're ready to go now. Because if you're ready to go now, then you can be working on your thoughts on what you will want to apply for the Main Street grant in January. But keeping in mind whatever happens on the region, it would probably be a good idea to join that regional effort.
And we can do that to both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It wasn't originally part of my mindset, but I can see where you might want to be a designated, but still be under the umbrella of a regional, because again, with small communities, the likelihood of you being able to fund a full-time Main Street position as one community is pretty small, but by joining with a region, you might all be able to, over the long haul, figure it out. So.
Thank you. Next question is for you. In the meantime, while we are waiting for the time and a great organization of either of these opportunities, can individual business owners, people reach out to EOBA directly for these small funds in the meantime, or is what you're here for representing how you can roll in to Main Street?
So our grant program specifically, it won't be available. We'll open the guidelines again in fall of 2023. Okay. But they are open to small businesses. Yeah, true. Okay. This is true. So that's kind of how, But I would say too, and something like Kate and I have been talking about, and I think kind of where Main Street comes into play as well, are around those project ideas. I think we're always kind of listening, what are those needs? Where are those opportunities? Because, she's having conversations with trail partners or other organizations, different things. And so I think for us, our long-term goal is having a better repository of project needs, what is the dollar amount, you know, just so when there are kind of quick turnaround things, being like, oh my gosh, we know like there's this great project in Wallowa that, you know, is a no-brainer kind of thing.
Well, yeah, communicating certainly with the
Yeah.
chamber too. 'Cause that, yeah, I mean, I think it was mentioned, you know, I don't know what I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I know, I've said that to Garrett before we leave. It's, yeah, loop me in.
Mhm.
The chamber is a great way to get you connected with a lot of other things countywide in the region, across the state, so.
And I will say we do rely quite a bit on Jennifer to kind of be the ears and eyes for the county. So like,
To know all the things.
yeah, right. I have like the slide. It's a megaphone where it's like shows like you as like the individual and kind of the local chamber, EOBA, travel organ, and like how it kind of creates like this megaphone effect, but really making it a two-way street. You know, of those open lines of communication, because again, I think the more we can kind of talk, collaborate, share ideas, you know, the more work and hopefully funding we can get to our small communities.
Wasn't there some sort of structure that was put together a couple of years ago? I was out, so I didn't see that, but
Yeah.
is that something that we could revisit, that we could start with again?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
up to
there
you.
was a report written at that time with goals and objectives for each of the 4 points and some ideas at that time of what
Okay.
community projects could be. So it might be something that you could take out and look at and see, is this relevant? Do we need to what pieces do we need to reach out to the community again on? But there is for Wallowa, there's that report in
Okay.
place.
Okay.
Enterprise, it's been a while since we've done any of that brainstorming kind of stuff.
But many times.
But many times. And they reaffirmed every time what we did the previous time, but yeah. But there is some foundational stuff to look at too. Those are all in electronic format, so those are easily shared.
It's, if you don't mind, it's interesting you say many times. So I've got a friend who, and everybody's tired of hearing the story, but I've got a friend who is in Wetumpka, Alabama. And she's actually the Chamber of Commerce director there. We've talked on the phone with her.
Yeah.
Well, they have a Main Street program also, and when they started, it would gain interest and it would fall off, and it would gain interest and fall off. And she said finally 6 or 8 times into it, everybody was just going, I'm not throwing my money at that because it's just going to fail again. What they did was they got together with just a few people and they found a point of interest, which happened to be along that river. There happened to be a snail in there. It wasn't endangered, anything like that. It was just this particular thing that they had. And so they just created this little trail and they said, well, we don't have anywhere to take this. It goes along the river, but we want to develop some things inside the town. 80% of their buildings that were downtown were either boarded up or open to the elements. And nobody wanted to go downtown. Nobody. And as they started this going, and there was a little bit of effort going with their program that was sponsored by the national program, they got it to where now, not only is the business district full, then they're finding other places to do some rezoning and some other things with that. And it's for their community. Yeah, people come as tourism because it's great, but they've always had this line of tourism because it's on the way to watch Alabama football games. So, but now they stop there and they support those, but it all just took a little group like us sitting around here. And now that we've got these foundations to work off of, I think we should just take it and run with it. Because the consensus around the table today in Wallowa was, where do we sign? How do we get there faster? So,
Yeah, this afternoon, it was a pretty robust conversation. You guys were ready to dig into the weeds on things.
yeah. But see, so that would help folks, like yourself. You say, wow, we need more people around there. Well, if we can start this and help with that, that's great, because it's about the whole county.
It
It's
is.
about bringing it all
And
together.
I've always felt we were just this little chain of pearls,
Yeah, right.
and that we should all work together.
We should all work together, absolutely.
It's like when the brick posts their special, I repost that on my Facebook.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Because that's what it's all about. I mean, we're all in it together, even though Joseph doesn't think so. But that's how I feel about it, that we all have a great deal of assets to offer for
Exactly.
the whole picture.
We all bring unique things to the table. And people we need to realize that as communities amongst ourselves in this county, we need to realize it's not ever been, it's probably an us against them at one time, but it's not that. Nobody benefits from an us against them.
And I think with enterprise, I mean, and there's not a lot of people here that remember back, but, starting in about 2000, we had a real awakening, and we had a very active merchant association where we had meetings twice a month with 25 or 30 people.
Wow.
And we did open it up to all the churches, and not just retail, but service industry, and I mean, we had flowers on every light post that was all watered by volunteers, and, and when you think back about the good old times, it gets very discouraging at this time, when we can't even pull off Summerfest or Winterfest, or,
But even for enterprise, because enterprise seems to me to be just because it's a vibrant, robust place that's being regenerated. I mean, I'm looking at some of those old buildings, while they're being refurbished and brought back to their former glory, and it just seems to me that once we get to Lostine and Wallowa, it's like, oh my God, look at this place. It's time that we could do something to regenerate our communities. But do you feel that enterprise is
we're
not?
nothing of what we used to be. And I know you can't look back, we have to go forward. But like, we only have 5 retailers on Main Street. Either it's empty or it's service, like Main Street Motors or engineers, and those aren't businesses that generate for retail,
Well,
But I
doesn't
mean-
even have that. Well, doesn't even have like offices and stuff.
we are the county seat, so that's a big plus. We have the hospital, we have a wonderful, we did some work with Chris on rural development sometime back, he worked a lot with Daryl at the theater and things like that. He wanted us to make a list of all the things, at least 30 things you could do in enterprise that you couldn't do anyplace else. And our list was wonderful, what you could get in enterprise. And I think one of our biggest problems is enterprise is so sprawled out. I mean, we go from grain growers to Les Schwab. We don't really have just a main street that all the businesses are on, where it's huge downtown. So but I think too, with how do you get people to come to open up a business? And to me, it's very difficult to have a fulfillment center on one of our 4 main corners. I know Andy McKee's doing a lot, but like 5 businesses were in that building. And Wendy and myself are the only 2 that are still in business, So those are the difficult things, that.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot that an organized group could do to get some businesses. Some of our Main Street communities are doing some pretty cool things. Like St. Helens, they do a business plan competition, and so they work with their local economic development partners to do a business plan course, and people that go through that course, they work with the banks to put up a $5,000 grant and a $20,000 0% loan. And so you go through it, and then you do a community Shark Tank kind of thing, and the one whose business plan is selected by the community gets that grant and the money to start up their business. And so, it's the local leadership that, comes together to put together that kind of a program, because it took your economic development partners, it took the banks putting up the capital, it took the Main Street organization to organize it, and, so they were all kind of working together. So there's some fun things like that. So there are some ways to attract businesses. Fundamentally, you have to clean up the space and make them look like they're business ready. Put up posters to say this space is full of opportunities. So as people are coming through town and they like your community, they go, oh, well, what's the possibilities? Having a good sense of the types of businesses that you need, and what are some of those traffic generator kinds of opportunities? What's happening in other Main Street districts? I always tell people, look on our website at our previous, we video now our awards. So I said, look at inspiration, what some of the other communities are doing. Watch our short little videos, little 3-minute videos, and get kind of inspired with adaptive reuse or historic preservation or events or economic development activities. So, but that's why a focused effort can be really helpful in identifying what the priorities are and what are some of those things that you can do. Small incremental things. I'm telling you, they add up over the years until all of a sudden you sit back and go like, oh wow.
So there's communities that have done all that that you could look at, like who is tiered up? Who's an accredited policeman? That 4th tier, the accredited ones. Like, who's that? Who's done so much?
Who's up there? Well, we've just created a tier, so it officially launches on June 1st. We've just given the names of the communities that we think should receive national accreditation. But the ones that I'm pretty confident will move up to the accredited will be like Klamath Falls and Astoria and Albany and Oregon City and McMinnville.
Go to Astoria.
I think part of that too, though, is the population density. Like Astoria is spitting distance to Portland, Vancouver, Washington, as opposed to, we're at the end of the road out here. And it's not as if we have a huge influx of big, deep-pocketed people who want to open businesses and invest a bunch of money here.
I didn't show the 2 slides at the end. I had 2 case studies from some of our smaller communities. One of them was down on the south coast in Port Orford, population 1,200. And over the 12 years that we've been working with them, it's just been so amazing to see the transformation of their community, built on keeping their community character, just enhancing what they already are. When I first went to that community to work with them, they have a really humble downtown. Not a lot of historic architecture in place, but it's who they are. But when we were doing the driving tour, they kept talking about this person or that person or this person, and it was all these artists or maker kind of people, And so when we got back and meeting with the leadership group at that time, I said, you're a really small town. We have to leverage your resources, get everybody on the same page. I said, you were talking about this painter, this woodworker, this carver, this, sculptor, an author, and all of these creative people. Let's have as an overarching strategy arts and culture as your overarching strategy, and let's use the Main Street 4-point approach and work on making it come alive, what you have as a strength in your community. So let's look at some design things that you can do to make it feel like it's an art community, which meant being a little bit looser with paint color than we normally are in a Main Street district to feel like an arts place. They did a lot of murals that covered the vacant spaces so that it didn't look like so bad until they filled some of those spaces or fixed some of those buildings. And they attracted some art galleries to their district and some good restaurants to complement that. Promotion-wise, they were doing some things around the art and art walks and things like that. And then the economic vitality-wise, like I said, attracting some of those art galleries in place. And then doing some things to some traffic calming things, because it was just all highways, no bike lanes, no crossings, so you try and get from one side of the highway to the other, you're taking, your life in hand. And so they worked and got some, bike lanes and some turn lanes in the middle and really slowed traffic down. And then we got a dark sky ordinance in place to preserve, the being able to view the stars at nighttime. They got the city to adopt a arts and culture kind of ordinance for their community. So, you know, now when you go there, at least in my eyes, when I see how vibrant it feels compared to when I went there a few years ago. So, you know, they're really rural.
Right.
You know, they do have a lot of traffic like you do, you know, going through, but the people weren't stopping because they didn't know what was there.
Right.
There wasn't any signal, any visual cue that this was a place to stop and get out of their car. Other than that they have a beautiful coast right there off the downtown, you know, but yet they weren't attracting people.
So you were mentioning the chicken and the egg, didn't you say that? So I'm understanding this, if I'm understanding this, so if we can get the fix it up, part of the problem is Enterprise has all of the offices and businesses. Everybody will allow drives there to go to work or LeGrand. So we need places that they can stay and work there. I think hopefully the clinics will help. We've got 2 new clinics coming in, but they still, I don't know, I guess, how do we get more businesses in there? Where do we start with the fixing it up first, and do we even have the space for that?
So I think
Build
fix
buildings in there?
what you got, and then people like it, and then they come.
And then they can live there and work there instead of driving out of town, you know, then we can have more restaurants and then it builds a little bit, right? So,
It's incremental. And I would say low hanging fruit first. So what are those things that don't cost a lot of money but can have a big impact? That's where a lot of the placemaking activities come in first in a community, and some events to get people talking, just bring people together, building trust, that you have an idea, you're accomplishing some things, and progress is being made slowly and incrementally, those kinds of things. Those vacant spaces, you know, begin to connect property owners with the resources to make the improvements. In the meantime, you know, put artwork or temporary displays or whatever
I love
to make
all
them not look so.
Our mural on the library is
Yeah.
just gorgeous, I love that.
Yeah. Wash windows. Amazing how much wash window can do for your downtown.
What's your next step then to determine if you've got 3 communities and we're moving it?
Pardon?
What's the next step to determine if you have 3 communities and we're moving it?
Hearing from the communities. So, I mean, we don't have a specific process, I guess, at this point. So this was the first step to hear what we see, what we've heard so far. We're going to have you do the straw poll, but have an idea that Wallowa is going to say yes, mostly. But we're going to need to go back out to the communities that didn't really show up this week to see what did we just not connect with the right people?
What about the property, so like I just rent, so what about the owner of my place and then the restaurant? Don't they need to be involved in this, because I can't just change the build, you know, I can't put in their 2 cents.
It's wonderful if property owners are involved in maintaining and improving their properties and investing in that.
Right.
But the community can do a lot, even if you have a reluctant property owner.
Yeah,
I think.
maybe, I don't know.
I don't know.
Terry's interested.
Well, yeah, but that's not where I am now, I'm just talking about Kitty, because she's got the whole chunk there, you know?
Yeah. So really the next step is for Lisa to hear from communities, you know, generally that, yeah, we're willing to explore this idea a little bit further. And then, you know, we'll get some applications together to, you know, have people formally apply, you know, at some point in the future, you know, as we're kind of working to build it out for this county level program. But, yeah.
I think those of us who have been in attendance at these meetings today, I need to bend a few ears and get the word out. I mean, I know that at the Blue Banana, I saw the flyer. I wasn't really necessarily all that interested. And then I talked to Terry Journo, and Terry had expressed an interest. And I thought, well, gee, maybe I should go to that too. Not that I have anything, I'm not in the retail business, you know, I'm in the rental business, and we do need housing. you know, that's my, that's what I'm concentrating on. Potentially looking for grant money or low interest loans, rural development loans, whatever. And, but I think those of us who have been in attendance need to bend some ears and just let people know, hey, you know what, you missed out. You missed out on a great conversation, and I'm sure you guys would be maybe willing to come back and do another presentation at some point in the not too distant, or are we, is this it? I mean, that's up to us.
Yeah. Well, we'd have to see what the interest is, you know, and if there's some strong interest, and then what would help, you know, generate even more interest.
Is there a webinar that some of these people can look at?
Yeah, on our website, not on the rural regional yet, but on our website, there's actually a lot of recorded webinars. We have like just a 15-minute overview of what Main Street is and Oregon Main Street, so people can look at that particular webinar. We have an hour webinar in each of the 4 points of Main Street, so if people want to learn more about what the design, we actually have 2 recorded webinars on that one on economic vitality, one on promotion. So there's a lot of material online for people to dive in a little bit deeper. If you go to our website, there's an orange portal button that takes you into our network information. We have like our facing page with general information, but the printed materials, publications, resource guides, workbooks, all of those kinds of things are through that orange portal button.
How many people do you need to make it get started? You said we need to find out if people are interested, or how many?
Yeah.
How many?
Well, if it's going to be rural regional, then at least 3 communities, and then whatever size leadership group. For a really small town, at least 7 to 9 people would be good. Initially, I mean, that will grow, but at least to get it started. Yeah.
7 to 9 people.
But Wallowa could,
That's a lot.
if we had enough energy in Wallowa, we could take the bull by the horns and go for it without having 2 other communities involved.
Yeah.
But there's benefit to having it be rural, like, there's a lot more
Yes.
partnership, like, it'd be worth it.
Right.
To drum up and be like, if
And-
Lostine's on the tipping point, let's help them.
Yeah, and you know, the communication side of P's, you know, that pesky state that asks for reports and, you know, information, a contact person.
I did hear that, I was like, wait, no, when's this meeting, every single Thursday? Is there a staff person that does that, or is that?
No, and the Thursday meetings they're non-required. People just join who want to, so it's a fluid group that joins anywhere from 15 to 30 people every week. We just get together, those who have time and energy, but it's not a requirement. And we started, actually one of our executive directors started it at the beginning of the pandemic, and then we kept it going. And every time I try and stop it, everybody is like, no, we still want it. I'm like, the pandemic's over. And they're like, yep, but we still want to meet. And I'm like, okay, I'll still organize it. So,
But you have to like troubleshooting too, right? Like, hey, I have this idea or
yeah.
challenge, and
Yeah. Or sometimes they bring in our partners, like Travel Oregon joined us this morning to talk about the huge event that's going to impact the valley this summer. So
Oregon 22.
yeah, it's a track and field event that's never been held in the U.S., so it's a super big deal.
And where is it happening?
It's
Eugene.
happening in Eugene,
Hayward.
but it's impacting hotels because they're coming over. The teams are coming over early to practice and whatever, so it's impacting from Medford up to Portland. All of the hotels. As
They added to the statewide lodging tax specifically to raise money to support this event. So it had a window of time where it was taking funds from the. It's been in the planning for a long time. I'm glad they're still gonna be able to do it.
like 7 years, I think.
Yeah.
Good thing it wasn't planned for last year.
It technically was, and it got rescheduled.
What month does it happen?
July.
Really gone up a lot. It went up a lot last year.
Yeah. Well, we've had you for 2 hours,
Yeah.
so it's just, but lots of good questions and lots of good comments.
May I say one more thing? Kudos to you and the chamber for being involved in this.
Absolutely.
because I think so many times in the past, maybe true or not true, a lot of people, especially Enterprise in the Lower Valley, have felt that the chamber was pretty much Joseph and the lake. And granted, they are the tourist destination, and I understand the dollars going into that for advertisement and things like that. But I think it's great for the chamber to be involved with this, so thank you.
Absolutely. Well, it is the Wallowa County
Yes.
Chamber of Commerce. I think that's important.
Yes.
Designation for organization. But yes, thank you.
And I, for one, want to tap into your brain, because if you've been in business that long, think how many others are just like yourself that would be just so valuable sitting around at this table, because we can learn something from everyone. And,
That's right,
yeah. So thank you for being here.
And to celebrate Sandra, Chief Joseph's Days would not be
No,
what it is.
Mule Days now.
I'm sorry, Mule Days, oh my gosh. Mule Days would not be what it is without her countless hours. Volunteer effort. So thank you, Sandra. In addition to being a business owner, everything you poured into your community.
Yeah.
Sandra's been involved in so many things over the years that, I mean, probably a credit to her with a lot.
Well, you only have one go-round,
Yeah.
you know, so you don't want to get to the end going like, I wish I would've, you know, so.
Well, that's what I'll keep telling my wife about our.
Well, thank you all for being here, for
Thank you.
exploring this idea with us. And we hope that whatever's right for your community, you'll, you know, continue to work for the betterment, whether it's part of Main Street or rural regional. But, you know, a lot of opportunities here in the valley.
Was Ambler one of the Main Street things, or did they do their own thing? Ambler? They redid all the sidewalk walks and street, Ambler?
Ambler
Oh,
and Union.
no, they did that on their own.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I just think it's so.
Yeah, yeah. I think they did it before.